Welcome back, everybody. Let's take a look at some quick review. Remember that the nuts and bolts, the mechanics of writing are just as important as developing ideas. And in English 102, as we begin to work with quotes in support of our discussions, there's some things that are often overlooked and can create some major errors, some fouls in writing, especially with sentence structure errors. So if you remember, a fragment is just a piece of a sentence, pretending to be a sentence, can't stand alone. Then a comma splice is when we have a comma all by itself between independent clauses. And then the run-on sentence is where we literally have two independent clauses running into each other. Number one, Elisa has never done anything that she wanted to do other than plant her flowers. She is very shy towards her husband and set herself for Henry's arrival when she heard him entering the house. Anybody see what's going wrong there? On this first one, we have a sentence fragment. What's the fragment? I'll go ahead and highlight it. There we go. What's wrong with this? Well, when is a subordinating word. So when she heard him entering the house, that's a dependent clause. And a dependent clause cannot stand alone. It relies upon an independent clause. And if we look inside of this, what do we see? We see right in front of it an independent clause. So how can we join the dependent clause to the independent clause? This one has a really easy fix that a lot of people say, you've got to be kidding, Mr. K. That's all I have to do? And the answer is yes. The period goes away, and we go from a capital W to a lowercase w. And that way, we join the dependent clause to the independent clause, and we fix the fragment. Number two, lines 34 through 35, no matter if bruised or spiked with stubble, went surely to the cider apple heap, indicate that even though the apples have bad spots on them or twigs sticking from them, they went to the cider apple pile where they will be crushed to make apple cider. It does not matter what these apples look like. Yeah, that's a really easy one to identify. The run-on sentences are really easy to pick out. I always like to say that if you're proofreading, you're reading your work aloud before you submit it, and you start to run out of breath, right? That's a signal that you have a run-on sentence because you run out of breath. And where do we see it here? You see it right there. And there's lots of different ways to get in here and fix this. There's 4 different ways to get in here and fix it. So might have one solution here, but then you might come up with another one and it would still be correct. A good thing to do here, right? The sentence before that is really lengthy. It's got a lot going on. Let's just use period and capitalize to begin a new sentence. Boom. And then we fix the run-on. Sylvia Plath also symbolizes aging in line 17 of Mirror. In me, she has drowned a young girl, and in me, an old woman. The woman standing before the mirror still wants to be young and youthful, even though she is old. What's wrong here? Here we have a comma splice. A lot of folks say a comma splice is where we have a comma where it doesn't belong, and that's not really true definition of a comma splice. A comma splice is when we have a comma all by itself between independent clauses. So where do we see this happen? Right there. That comma makes the comma splice. This comma here in front of the quote is needed. So this comma we need. We need that comma. That's not the comma splice. This is the comma splice. We could fix, remember, from English 101, all the different ways to fix the comma splice. And I always tell people, you need to get into the habit of when you have a direct quote in support, right? A good thing to do is just go ahead and end that sentence. So what we would do is kick out the comma and just go ahead and use the period. There's nothing wrong with using the period to fix run-ons and comma splices. So there we got it fixed. It symbolizes his life and knowing that everything he has done has been done through hard work, not knowing anything different. What's going on here? Another sentence fragment. Now, this one is different than the fragment in number 1, which was a dependent clause standing by itself. Here we have a phrase standing by itself. So what we're going to do with number 4 is we're going to turn the period into a comma, lowercase the n, and just join that phrase to that independent clause, and then we fixed it. So you'll seeing with these fragments, a common way to fix is just to find an independent clause nearby and connect it. Easy fixes. The speaker wants the reader to know that being a good person is not always the easiest thing to do. However, if one will open his or should be her imagination, it will become easier. What do we see here? You might have recognized, however, common conjunctive adverb that we worked with in English 101, and this kind of looks a little fishy, and I totally agree. You probably noticed that. And you might have remembered from English 101 that this punctuation results in a comma splice. When we have a conjunctive adverb or a transitional phrase acting in this manner, we put the semicolon in front and a comma goes behind. Onlookers thought Richard Cory was a perfect man who lived a perfect life. He was unhappy with his existence, as seen in his suicidal action that closes the poem, and put a bullet through his head. Boy, I was running out of breath. Yes, I was. So there it is. Let's fix this one in a different way, use a different method. Can we use a semicolon all by itself to fix a run-on? Survey says yes, we can. Ironically, losing something does not matter to Bishop, as seen in her poem, One Art. This loss can be someone dying or losing keys or time. Comma splice. But which comma? Remember definition of a comma splice? A comma trying to join independent clauses all by itself. So right there. Let's fix this with a different method. So we're going to keep the comma here, And add everybody's favorite coordinating conjunction, one of the fanboys. Remember fanboys? Or and, nor, but, or, yet so. So there we have and. Gets us out of trouble. The watch has more sentimental value to the speaker, while the keys can be replaced. The watch cannot because it was a gift from the speaker's mother. You recognize what's going on here? While is a subordinating word. It makes a dependent clause. And what do we have going on, everybody? A dependent clause standing by itself. Whoa, what does that mean? A fragment. What do we see on either side? Independent clauses. So now what do we have to do? We have to do a little checkup here to see which independent clause our dependent clause is going to attach to. So what can we do? We can cover up. The watch has more sentimental value to the speaker while the keys can be replaced. What about this one? While the keys can be replaced, the watch cannot. Yes, there it is. So now we have the subordinating word at the beginning. And remember, in that structure, the comma goes after the dependent clause. Lines 6 through 7 discuss that one cannot hide. A change will come whether someone is ready for it or not. Two independent clauses, comma all by itself. Yep, you know what that makes. That makes a comma splice, right? How many different ways can we fix it? Many different ways. So we just did comma and in the previous one, and we use the semicolon all by itself. Let's do something different. Period, capitalize, different method. Then in number 10, last one, in conclusion, speech to the young ends with a very soft message when compared to the aggressive beginning. After the speaker delivers his or her message, the audience should be able to have closure in their lives. What do we see here? This one is like number 8. We have a sub beginning a dependent clause, right? So there we have the fragment, and as before, we have to decide what's going to happen here. So I'm going to cover up. In conclusion, speech to the young ends with a very soft message when compared to the aggressive beginning, after the speaker delivers his or her message. Let's check the other half. After the speaker delivers his or her message, the audience should be able to have closure. There it is. So now we're just going to start with after and use a comma after message. So that was another fragment. Great. So please be aware that working with these sentence structure errors in English 102, you're taking a step up. The sentences are going to be more complex, could have some more punctuation going on. So please take your time. You know, a simple tool like an extra pen or pencil covering up, and as you're going through and parsing your way through the sentence can be a really helpful tool. So we still have some more review work to do, and we'll take a look at that in the next lecture.